Hello and welcome. In this video, we will be going over Scrum Master exam questions. You may see similar questions appear on your CSM, PSM, or ACP exam. You can really use these practice questions to help you prepare for any Scrum Master exam. I'm going to read each question to you and give you a few seconds to answer them. Feel free to hit the pause button if you need more time. You can also download all of these questions using the link in the description below. Okay, let's dive in. Question 1. In waterfall methodology, the duration of the activities, like development, testing, etc. are A. Planned to be fixed irrespective of any calculation, time-boxed. B. Predicted using some calculations based on today's weather. C. Never decided up front. The correct answer is B. The waterfall activities are estimated and calculated well in advance based on today's knowledge and assumptions. Their duration will vary depending on the calculations. They are not time-boxed, they do not have fixed durations. Question 2. In waterfall, the project team often gets early feedback from customers or markets about the product they are building, so they can act on this feedback on time. A. True. B. False. B is the correct answer. Waterfall-based projects rarely offer any opportunity to get early feedback about the product. Question 3. What factors will increase complexity? Select all that apply. A. Larger number of people on the project. B. Longer duration of the project. C. Batching of a large number of features into one big release. A, B, and C are all correct answers. All of the factors listed will increase complexity. Question 4. Building complex products like software is a complex adaptive problem. Complex adaptive problems are A. Deterministic. B. Stochastic. C. Hard to predict even using past history. The correct answer is C. Complex adaptive problems are hard to predict. Question 5. Select all that apply. Empiricism provides A. Frequent feedback opportunities to obtain information that can be used to plan better and eliminate the uncertainty. B. Frequent opportunities to discuss possibilities. C. Frequent opportunities to make informed decision, thus reducing risk. The correct answers are B and C. Empiricism is an alternative to waterfall to manage complexity and uncertainty. In waterfall, the risk of uncertainty accumulates over long cycles. The risk is reduced by empiricism because it provides frequent feedback and course correction points. These points are where more information may be available to view different possibilities and make informed decisions. However, empiricism does not completely eliminate uncertainty. Question 6. Select the best answer. Scrum is a newer way of doing things to address complex problems. It is a newer way because A. It offers new terminology for traditional practices. B. It is easier to master than the traditional way. C. It increases the opportunity to control risk and optimizes the predictability of progress. D. It is closely associated with emerging technologies. The correct answer is C. Scrum does introduce new terminology, but it is not the primary difference. Scrum is easy to learn, but difficult to master. There is incidental association of a lot of emerging technologies executed in Scrum, but that is not the reason for its identity as a newer way. Scrum does not guarantee success, but it increases the likelihood of success by controlling the risks and optimizing predictability. Question 7. Scrum effectively limits the risk of unknowingly doing something wrong by A. Having a detailed and extensive risk management plan. B. Having multiple checkpoints and a thorough review by senior management at those checkpoints. C. Using short iterations called sprints. The correct answer is C. Near the end of each sprint, the team will get feedback on their product demonstration from the stakeholders and users to understand if their work was worthwhile. If the work outcome is identified as a waste, the cost spent is limited only to that of the weeks incurred in the sprint. This feedback is a control and can be used to plan the next sprint. In other words, the risk of pursuing a wrong direction is limited to the cost of one sprint. Question 8. Scrum has been used to A. Develop products, product enhancements, and operational environments for product use. B. Research viable markets and new product capabilities. C. Manage the operation of organizations. D. All of the above. The correct answer is D. All of the above. Scrum has been used to develop software, hardware, embedded software, networks of interacting function, autonomous vehicles, schools, government, marketing, managing the operation of organizations, and almost everything we use in our daily lives, as individuals and societies. Question 9. Scrum team is focused on A. The product goal. B. Testing of the product. C. Design of the product. While the individual team members may focus on finer aspects of product building such as testing, the Scrum team as a cohesive unit of professionals is focused on the product goal. Question 10. To reduce the likelihood of not meeting big commitments, Scrum uses A. Time boxing so the planned events can happen on time. B. Time boxing so the commitments will have additional buffer of time. C. Time boxing so the events cannot exceed a predetermined amount of time. The correct answer is C. Scrum controls the risks associated with long-term planning and big commitments by constraining the product development into shorter iterations called sprints. Each sprint is strictly time-boxed so they expire on the predetermined date, no matter what. By time-boxing, the risk of pursuing a wrong direction is limited to the cost of one sprint. Question 11. Select all that apply. The formal opportunities for inspection and adaptation are A. The sprint. B. The Scrum team. C. The product increment. D. None of the above. The correct answer is D. None of the above. There are 4 Scrum events used for inspection and adaptation. They are sprint planning, daily Scrum, spring review, and sprint retrospective. Question 12. Select all that apply. The Scrum framework consists of A. Scrum standards. B. Scrum teams. C. Product development processes. D. Roles, events, artifacts, and rules associated with Scrum teams. The correct answers are B and D. The Scrum framework consists of Scrum teams and their associated roles, events, artifacts, and rules. Though there are standards such as definition of done, they are not formally called Scrum standards. Question 13. As per Empiricism, knowledge is acquired by A. Experience. B. Analytical tools. C. Formal teaching. The correct answer is A. Empiricism asserts that knowledge comes from experience in the past and the practice of making decisions based on what is known. Question 14. Select all that apply. In Scrum, the product owner who plays the business role A. Hands over the product backlog to the developer and leaves them alone. They only meet up again during final product delivery. B. Freezes the product backlog and tries not to change it. C. Works only with designated developers and not all the developers. D. Continuously collaborates with the developers, sometimes almost daily. The correct answer is D. The product owner continuously evolves the ordered list of everything that may be needed to meet the product goal. This list is called the product backlog. Since this list evolves based on frequent new insights, it requires the product owner to continuously work with the team to communicate these changing needs and to clarify questions about ongoing work. Question 15. In Scrum, the servant leader is the new name for the traditional role called project manager. A. True. B. False. The correct answer is B. False. Question 16. The Scrum Master is the manager of the Scrum team. A. True. B. False. The correct answer is B. False. In Scrum, there is no exclusive team manager role like a project manager. The Scrum Master manages Scrum deployment and coaches the team on Scrum. Question 17. In a traditional approach, blank organizes and manages the team members' work, and blank is their management style. A. Business manager, people centricity. B. A project manager, command and control. C. The team, self-management. The correct answer is B. Question 18. In self-managing teams, the work is divided between individual team members. Each team member takes accountability for the progress of only their work. A. True. B. False. The correct answer is B. False. In self-managing teams, the work is decomposed into work units. Individual team members take some work units. However, the entire work is accountable for the overall progress of reaching a common goals. Question 19. In their journey to deliver products of the highest business value, what factors will enable the Scrum team to balance creativity, flexibility, and productivity? Select all that apply. A. Strong team management and guidance by a team member identified as their leader. B. Having all the skills required to perform all their work without external help. C. Structuring the team such that it can self-manage its work against a common goal. The correct answers are B and C. Question 20. As a self-managing team, what can a Scrum team manage? Select all that apply. A. Managing their work to teach a common goals. B. Managing their human-related aspects like leave, firing one of the team members, office dress code, etc. C. Managing some other teams. D. Managing to support ad hoc high-priority requirements from important executives. The correct answer is A. Self-managing teams are empowered to organize and manage their work. However, the team cannot self-manage the human resource-related aspects. They also cannot work from a different set of requirements outside of the product backlog. Question 21. In Scrum, team velocity is a good metric to track the progress of product development. A. Yes. B. No. The correct answer is B. No. In Scrum, the real mark of progress is the delivery of a usable product increment. Question 22. A Scrum team must produce the following artifacts. Select all that apply. A. Project plan. B. Product backlog. C. Design document. D. Sprint backlog. E. Test case specifications. F. Project status report. G. Increment. The correct answers are B, D, and G. Scrum mandates only 3 artifacts: the product backlog, spring backlog, and product increment. The other artifacts are optional and can be chosen by the team if they add value to their work. Question 23. Scrum team create 6 artifacts: product backlog, sprint backlog, increment, product goal, sprint goal, definition of done. A. True. B. False. The correct answer is B, false. In Scrum, there are 3 artifacts: the product backlog, sprint backlog, and increment. The product goal, sprint goal, and definition of done are reflections of the commitment to these artifacts. Question 24. Transparency, inspection, and adaptation are the 3 pillars of A. Empirical process control theory. B. Lean. C. PDCA. D. Six Sigma. The correct answer is A. Question 25. Transparency in empiricism refers to A. Clear thinking and planning by each team member. B. The significant aspects of the product development process are defined by common standards and made visible so the observers will share the same understanding. C. The highest levels of morality. The correct answer is B. Transparency requires that significant aspects of the process must be defined by common standards, and they must be visible to those responsible for the outcome. Question 26. What is used by the Scrum team to identify unfinished work in a sprint? A. Coding standard. B. Definition of ready. C. Testing standard. D. Definition of done. The correct answer is D. The definition of done provides the same shared understanding of what it means for the work to be complete. It spells out all that is required to get the work done. It is used by the team to assess what is yet to be done to complete the product increment. Everybody developing the same shared understanding is the key to transparency. Question 27. Developer is requested by an important stakeholder to help them with an urgent and important task outside the sprint goal. The team member set aside the sprint work for the day and help with this request. Which of the following statement best describes the team member's actions? A. The team member has gone the extra mile and should be rewarded. B. The team member has violated Scrum rules by not consulting with his manager. C. The team member did not live by the Scrum value of focus. The correct answer is C. The Scrum value of focus helps to avoid doing other things not related to the sprint goal. The team member is expected to live the Scrum value of focus by prioritizing and completing the sprint work to achieve the goals of the sprint team. Question 28. Is Scrum immutable? A. Yes. B. No. The correct answer is A. Yes, Scrum is immutable. Question 29. The organization or senior management's support blank. A. Is not needed for Scrum implementations. B. Is not needed because there is no scope for management in Scrum. C. Is needed to support the product owner to maximize the product value and the Scrum Master to coach and implement Scrum. The correct answer is C. The organization or senior management support is a critical success factor for product planning and development in an empirical environment. Their action is needed to structure the self-managing teams. Question 30. Fill in the blank. The next sprint starts. A. Only after the product increment is released to production. B. Only after the retrospective event of the current sprint. C. Only after the team for the next sprint is on board. D. Only after the sprint planning. The correct answer is B. The product owner may choose to release the increment to production, but it is not mandatory. The same team will continue to work on the next sprint. Sprint planning is the first event of the spring. The last event of the sprint is the retrospective. Question 31. Only the product owner can come up with items that can be considered for the product backlog. Others cannot provide input, recommendations, and ideas about new items. A. True. B. False. The correct answer is B, false. While the product owner has the final say on the content and order of the product backlog, they can get the input, recommendations, and ideas about new items from any stakeholder or Scrum team member for consideration. Question 32. The Scrum team has which of the following roles? Select all that apply. A. Product manager. B. Business manager. C. Architect. D. Developer. E. Scrum master. F. Project manager. G. Product owner. The correct answer is D, E, and G. There are 3 roles within Scrum, and they are the development team, Scrum Master, and Product Owner. Question 33. Before starting the first sprint, what needs to be in place? Select all that apply. A. A complete product backlog capturing detailed product needs. B. Availability of the project manager. C. Just enough product backlog items with business ideas for the first sprint. D. Completed system architecture. E. Staffed Scrum team. The correct answers are C and E. There are no preconditions for the first sprint. The availability of a Scrum team and a list of business ideas for the first sprint are enough to start the sprint. Question 34. What is the size of the Scrum team? A. 6 people. B. 10 or less. C. Between 3 to 9 people. D. More than 10 people. The correct answer is B. The Scrum team is typically 10 or fewer people. Question 35. Fill in the blank. When a Scrum team adds a new member, the productivity A. Decrease. B. Increase. C. Stays the same. The correct answer is a. Decrease. When a new team member joins, the productivity temporarily decreases as the new member gets up to speed. Question 36. In backlog refinement sessions, the developers will code and test. A. True. B. False. The correct answer is B. False. There is no technical development activity during the backlog refining session. Question 37. Which of the following statements is correct? A. The product backlog cannot be changed without an approved change request. B. The product backlog is not updated when a sprint is in progress. Changes to team size may cause changes in the product backlog. C. The product backlog can be updated anytime by the product owner. Changes in business requirements, market conditions, or technology may cause changes to the backlog. The correct answer is C. Question 38. How does the Scrum team define the definition of done? A. It always creates a new definition of done. B. It checks with the product owner if a definition of done is required and then proceeds to create one. C. None of the above. The correct answer is C. If there is an existing definition of done, the Scrum team will use it. If there's no existing definition of done, the Scrum team must create one. Question 39. Which of the following statements is true? A. Scrum Master is a management position. A person with strong project management experience in delivering results is a good fit. B. Scrum Master is an optional position. C. Scrum Master is a management position. A person with Scrum experience and a coaching style of servant leadership is a good fit. D. None of the above. The correct answer is C. The Scrum Master is required to have Scrum experience and a strong inclination towards a servant leadership style. It is a mandatory position to keep the Scrum team and the organization focused on Scrum. Although the Scrum Master does not directly manage people, the role is a management position because the Scrum Master manages the Scrum framework implementation. Question 40. The developers do not have enough understanding of the product they are developing. The Scrum Master should not care because the issue is not related to Scrum. A. True. B. False. The correct answer is B. False. A Scrum Master coaches the developers to create high-value products. The Scrum Master ensures that goals, scope, and product domain are understood by everyone on the Scrum team. Question 41. The role of the Scrum Master with respect to the Scrum artifacts is to A. Coach the team to increase the transparency of the artifacts. B. Decide the format of the artifacts and ensure that the team follows it. C. Own the artifacts and be responsible for keeping them up to date. The correct answer is A. Question 42. During a sprint review, the stakeholders notice that the product development progress is not clearly visible and lacks transparency. Moreover, they are not able to understand the development team's next steps. Who bears the primary responsibility for this status? A. Scrum team. B. Scrum Master. C. A product owner. D. Developers. The correct answer is C. The product owner is accountable for ensuring that the product backlog is transparent, visible, and understood. Question 43. A developer is requested by an important stakeholder to help them with some external task because it is urgently required by the organization's board. The developer referred them to the product owner. In this case, the Scrum Master. A. Should do nothing since the developer's action is correct. B. Should coach the developer to support senior management requirements. C. Should handle the request. The correct answer is A. No one is allowed to tell the developers to work from a different set of requirements, and the developers are not allowed to act on what anyone else says. Question 44. The number one priority of the product owner is A. Managing the development work. B. Guarding the Scrum team from any interruptions. C. Maximizing the value of the Scrum team's work. D. Testing the development of the developer's work. The correct answer is C. Question 45. An organization forms Scrum teams each with a size of 15 members because it is a convenient way to make their current teams that are of the same size. A. This is okay. B. Scrum teams should be kept to under 10 people. C. It is up to the teams to decide how they want to be formed. The correct answer is B. Scrum recommends 10 or fewer people, which is small enough to reduce complexity but big enough to have the required skills and capacity. Anything less may get only marginal productivity gains. Anything more will invite complexity. Question 46. A Scrum team builds the product increment that almost meets the conditions set by the definition of done. To completely meet the definition of done, they hand over the product increment to another team outside of the Scrum team for testing. Is this truly a cross-functional team? A. Yes. B. No. The correct answer is B. No. A Scrum team should possess all the skills needed to deliver a valuable and useful product that meets the definition of one without external help. Question 47. A Scrum team decides that the frequency of the daily Scrum should be reduced to once a week. A. This is okay. B. Such decisions need to be approved by the Agile coach. C. The Scrum team is self-managing. They can choose their own best practices. D. The Scrum Master should coach the team on the essentials of conducting daily Scrums. The correct answer is D. Question 48. Who must participate in the sprint review? A. Scrum team. B. Audit team. C. Technical and domain experts. D. Stakeholders. The correct answer is A. Apart from the Scrum team, certain stakeholders may participate only if they are invited to the sprint review. The Scrum team must always participate. Question 49. Who performs inspections in Scrum events? Select all that apply. A. Product owner. B. Corporate audit group. C. Developers. D. Senior management. E. Technical domain experts. F. Invited stakeholders. The correct answers are A, C, and F. In Scrum, inspections are performed by those doing the work and those who have knowledge of the product. In addition to the developers, the product owner and invited stakeholders inspect the product increment during the sprint review. Question 50. A Scrum team must be cross-functional. It means A. Each team member must have more than one skill set. B. The team must have a mix of team members from each of the different technology functions of the organization. C. The team must have all competencies needed to create the increment according to the definition of done. D. The team must divide their work according to sub-functions but sync up their work no later than the sprint review. The correct answer is C. Question 51. A customer wants to communicate something very relevant and important about the product to the Scrum team. Who should they talk to? A. Everyone on the Scrum team. B. Product owner. C. Scrum master. D. Project sponsor. The correct answer is B. Question 52. Only the product owner communicates with the stakeholders. A. True. B. False. The correct answer is B. False. The entire Scrum team collaborates with stakeholders, not just the product owner. Question 53. A developer identifies a technical issue that requires other developers to work together to solve this. Who needs to facilitate this? A. Product owner. B. Scrum master. C. Developers. The correct answer is C. The developers are responsible for performing development work and meeting the sprint goal. If they have any issue that is within their influence to solve, they are responsible for resolving it. Question 54. In the early days of a product development's initial sprint, the product backlog A. Only lays out the initially known and best understood requirements. B. Is as comprehensive as required to complete the product. C. Is not shared with the developers until it is supplemented with other required specifications. The correct answer is A. In the beginning, the product backlog only lays out the initially known and best understood requirements. The product backlog is a living artifact that evolves and constantly changes to identify what the product needs to be appropriate, competitive, and useful. Question 55. The primary objective behind why a Scrum Master ensures that the Scrum team and those interacting with the team from the outside adhere to the Scrum rules is A. To preserve the hierarchy of reporting and communication protocol. B. To maximize the value created by the Scrum team. C. To avoid the likelihood of future audits finding any violations in implementing Scrum. The correct answer is B. It is the Scrum Master's responsibility to ensure that outside interactions do not distract the team from making progress in the sprint. Question 56. Sprint backlogs contain items for improvement that were identified in the sprint retrospective. A. True. B. False. The correct answer is B. False. Question 57. What does the sprint goal provide? A. Guidance to the team on why it is building the increment. B. Flexibility to the team about the functionalities implemented in this sprint. C. Coherence so that team members can work together. D. It communicates why the sprint is valuable to stakeholders. E. All the above. The correct answer is E. The sprint goal provides guidance to the developers. It also provides some flexibility regarding the functionality implemented within the sprint. The selected product backlog items deliver one coherent function, which can be the sprint goal. The sprint goal can be any other coherence that causes the Scrum team to work together toward a common but specific goal. Sprint goal also communicates why the current sprint is valuable to stakeholders. Question 58. Which estimation unit must be used by the developers for the work needed to convert the selected product backlog items into a working product increment? A. Function points. B. Ideal hours. C. Story points. D. Any useful sizing techniques. The correct answer is D. The work can be of varying size or estimated effort. Question 59. The sprint backlog is modified throughout the sprint. What would happen as soon as a new task is identified? A. The product owner adds it to the sprint backlog and communicates it to the Scrum team. B. The Scrum Master adds it to the sprint backlog and communicates it to the Scrum team. C. The developers add it to the sprint backlog and communicate it to the Scrum team. The correct answer is C. The sprint backlog belongs solely to the developers. Question 60. A Scrum team decides to divide the sprint backlog and assign ownership of every sprint backlog item to separate individuals on the team. The Scrum Master should do what? A. Encourage this practice. B. Coach the team to collectively take ownership of the sprint backlog items even though an individual works on a specific item. C. Discourage this practice. The correct answer is B. The sprint backlog is collectively owned by the developers. Question 61. During the sprint, while the sprint backlog can be modified as more is learned, no changes are made that would endanger the sprint goal. A. True. B. False. The correct answer is A. If the sprint goal is endangered, it would lead to cancellation of the sprint. Question 62. Since the team is self-managing in Scrum and they manage their own work, they do not need any planning to perform their work. A. True. B. False. The correct answer is B. There are still planning activities in Scrum, even though the team is self-managing. Question 63. Not having the daily Scrum will A. Reduce the opportunity to create a status report. B. Reduce the speed of development work. C. Reduce the transparency of overall progress. The correct answer is C. Failure to include any of the Scrum events, such as the daily Scrum, results in reduced transparency and is a lost opportunity to inspect and adapt. Question 64. During the daily Scrum, a team member says he does not know when his task will be complete. A. It is acceptable as the sprint review date is far away. B. Replace the team member and hire a new one. C. The developers should collaborate to plan alternative steps such as parking the member with someone else to eliminate the risk of not meeting the sprint goal. The correct answer is C. Question 65. In Scrum, the usage of the burn-down chart is a foolproof way of estimating the completion of product development. A. Incorrect. The burn-up chart is a better alternative. B. Incorrect. Forecasting tools such as burn-down chart do not replace the importance of empiricism. C. Correct. If the Scrum team is highly disciplined in updating the burn-down chart, then this can be true. The correct answer is B. Burn-up and burn-down charts are useful. However, they do not replace the importance of empiricism. Question 66. Within every sprint, the working increment should be tested progressively starting from unit testing, then integration testing, and finally user acceptance testing. A. Yes. This has to be done with every sprint. B. No. The test strategy is decided by the QA. C. Not necessarily. It is up to the team to find the best testing approach. D. Incorrect. The procedure should also include non-functional testing. The correct answer is C. While the team needs to ensure that each increment is thoroughly tested, all increments work together and meet the definition of done, it is up to the team to find the best approach to achieve this. Question 67. In the sprint review, the presentation of the product increment to stakeholders is A. To get the sprint completion sign-off. B. To provide the status of the project. C. To elicit feedback. The correct answer is C. The sprint review is an informal meeting, not a status meeting, and the presentation of the increment is intended to elicit feedback and foster collaboration. Question 68. The difference between the product burn-down chart and the sprint burn-down chart is A. In the product burn-down chart, the number of product backlog items is shown on the y-axis. In the sprint burn-down chart, the number of tasks is shown on the y-axis. B. In the product burn-down chart, the sprints are shown on the x-axis. In the sprint burn-down chart, the days of the sprint are shown on the x-axis. C. In the product burn-down chart, the sprints are shown on the y-axis. In the sprint burn-down chart, the days are down on the y-axis. The correct answer is B. Question 69. Select all that apply. The sprint review is an event that requires A. The product owner's sign-off. B. Active participation of the stakeholders invited by the product owner. C. Transition sign-off. D. Inspection and adaptation activities. The correct answers are B and D. Sprint review doesn't require formal sign-offs as it is an informal meeting to elicit feedback and foster active collaboration. Question 70. Which of the following statements is true? A. The retrospective focuses on the Scrum team's processes and people, and the sprint review focuses on the product. B. The retrospective focuses on the product, and the sprint review focuses on the Scrum team's processes. C. The retrospective focuses on the Scrum team's processes and people, and the sprint review focuses on velocity. The correct answer is A. Question 71. What is the length of the daily Scrum? A. 3 minutes. B. 15 minutes. C. 60 minutes. D. As long as the team wants it to be. The correct answer is B. Daily Scrum is limited to 15 minutes a day. Question 72. What should be the frequency of inspection in Scrum? Select all that apply. A. As planned in the sprint planning. B. As needed by the product owner. C. In every event within the sprint. D. As frequently as possible. The correct answers are C and D. Every event is an opportunity for inspection. The team can inspect frequently without having the inspections getting in the way of the work. Question 73. The definition of done provides a checklist of quality measures to take the increment to a potentially usable state, while the acceptance criteria focus on specifying the business features or functionalities. A. True. B. False. The correct answer is A. The definition of done is a commitment that defines the quality measures for a usable increment. Acceptance criteria are the specifications of the expected business features. Question 74. After a sprint review, the product owner deems that the product has come to an end. What is the next step? A. Communicate the Scrum team's availability to stakeholders. B. Conduct a retrospective. C. Write transition documentations. The correct answer is A. Usually the retrospective is the last event of a sprint. However, when the product owner decides that the development work is over, there is no need for a retrospective. The transition documentation is defined as part of the definition of done is that transition documentation is a requirement for the increment's release. A done increment would already have the transition document created. Question 75. The Scrum team gathers for the sprint planning meeting. The product owner has some stories, but the team finds that the stories do not provide enough information to make a forecast. What should be done next? A. The Scrum Master should cancel the sprint. B. The developer proceed with whatever is known. C. The developers make it transparent that they cannot make a forecast with insufficient information and work with the product owner on refining the user stories. The correct answer is C. The product owner needs to help clarify the selected product backlog items. Question 76. A Scrum team maintains a sprint burndown to track estimated remaining work. In the middle of the sprint, the burndown graph shows an upward spike. What does this indicate? A. A planned work is removed. B. The product owner added a new item to the sprint. C. The developers added new work. The correct answer is C. A spike indicates added work. Question 77. The value attached to the product backlog item is guaranteed to be realized. A. True. B. False. The correct answer is B. The value is an estimate based on assumptions. It has to be validated by releasing the item. Scrum facilitates the early validation by making it available as a valuable and useful increment to the product owner who can then choose to release it to production. Question 78. After sprint planning, the product backlog items selected into the sprint backlog are frozen and cannot be modified. The only way to modify the sprint backlog is to have the product owner cancel the sprint. A. True. B. False. The correct answer is B. The sprint goal gives the developers some flexibility regarding the functionality implemented within the sprint. As the developers work, they keep the sprint goal in mind. If the work turns out to be different than what the developers expected, they collaborate with the product owner to negotiate the scope of the sprint backlog within the sprint. Question 79. For a Scrum team, the sprint planning meeting are always going beyond the time box. What could be the likely causes? Select all that apply. A. The Scrum Master does not moderate and control the participants. B. The team didn't invest enough into backlog refinement. C. The product backlog size is huge. D. The developers are trying to get a perfect and detailed sprint plan. The correct answers are B and D. Question 80. Should you have more than 10 people on your Scrum team? A. Yes. It will increase productivity. B. Yes. It will create backups in case someone quits their job. C and O. Smaller teams communicate better and are more productive. D and O. Scrum roles cannot be provided to everyone on the team. The correct answer is C. Smaller teams communicate better and are more productive. There you have it. 80 questions to help you prepare for any of your Scrum Master exams, whether it is ACP, CSM, or PSM. We hope you found this video helpful. If you'd like to download these questions and study them further, please use the link in the description below. Thanks for joining us and have a wonderful day.